So, the first core value of Maranatha Community Church is biblical eldership. And so, what we see throughout the scripture is God calling for eldership to be the thing that is used to help God's government as it pertains to his people, his called out ones. And what we see specifically in the New Testament is that there's this urge for eldership, that eldership is supposed to lead and run a church organization. For example, we see in Paul's letter to Titus, in Titus chapter 1, verse 5, he says, "For this reason I left you in Crete, that you would set in order what remains and appoint elders in every city as I directed you." And then he goes on to list the characteristics that each elder should be having and increasing in. And so we see here that God's design for a church governing and a church functioning would be that there would be elders, there would be men of God who were appointed oversight of that church. And the primary function of the elder is to teach and to preach and to protect the congregation from false teaching by implementing sound doctrine and being men of God who can teach effectively according to what the scriptures say. We also see within this idea of biblical eldership that God is more concerned with the characteristics of the leadership than the charisma of the leadership. He's more worried about their characteristics than their gifts and talents and abilities. And so we see that it is important that this church and any churches that come from this church are ones that are founded on biblical eldership. We're living in a time where many churches and many movements are built on single leaders. They're built on a one man's charisma and teaching ability and ability to stir and move a crowd. We see a lot of churches that are built on talent and how good a worship team can sound, things of that nature. But we don't see that God is concerned with any of those things. He's concerned with biblical eldership, with men of God who are qualified, who are called, who are set apart for the purpose of leading his church and leading the people into sound doctrine. And so Maranatha Community Church, we are going to continue to model this picture of biblical eldership. In fact, I am an elder at another local church in Teaneck, New Jersey, and those elders have commissioned me. They've recognized the call of God in my life, and they've planted me over here to start this church plant, to continue on in this picture of biblical eldership. And so this is going to be a church that is not focused on single personalities, but is focused on the plurality of leadership, shared leadership, so that God can most be glorified.